So just a quick one, going over some verses in Colossians 2. It talks about how we are in the body of the Messiah, and that we are circumcised with the circumcision not done with hands, and that through Yeshua, through his sacrifice, he has nailed these handwritten ordinances. He has blotted out these handwritten ordinances and nailed them to the cross. And now, instead of the circumcision of the flesh, we circumcise our hearts. So this is just yet another scripture and another one of Paul's letters that shows you very clearly that Paul knew the difference between the Holy Covenant and the sacrificial law. Yeshua knew the difference between the Holy Covenant and the sacrificial law. And the servants in the last days who rise up are going to know the difference between the Holy Covenant and the sacrificial law. That's why I know the difference. Because Paul is telling us that we're no longer under this circumcision of the flesh. We're under this circumcision made without hands. It's the circumcision of the heart. It's the repentant heart that turns from the ways of the world and becomes obedient to God's ways. But what are we obedient to? We're obedient to the Holy Covenant. You Christians think that me and my brothers and sisters telling you to keep the 10 Commandments is us putting you back under the law. But no, it's not. Like when Paul is writing about the law of sin and death and the burden of the law and, the law of the flesh and all these different things, he's talking about the sacrificial law, not the 10 Commandments, not the Holy Covenant. And you see that right there in Colossians. In fact, if you compare Colossians 2:14 to Ezekiel 20, it'll show you there as well. Because in Colossians 2:14, where it mentions the blotting out of handwritten ordinances, even that, right there, the blotting out of handwritten ordinances. The 10 Commandments was written by the finger of God in stone. The book of the law that was written by Moses' hand, that was placed on the outside of the Ark of the Covenant, whereas the 10 Commandments was placed on the inside of the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant represents our hearts. So the 10 Commandments are supposed to be in our hearts, whereas the sacrificial law was placed on the outside because it was fleshly. So the circumcision of flesh was part of that fleshly law. But Yeshua wants us to circumcise our hearts. So if you compare Colossians 2:14, it says the blotting out of handwritten ordinances that were contrary to us. So then if you read Ezekiel 20, and Ezekiel 20 is a great chapter because it goes like from the start, runs through all the way back to, it might even be all the way back to Adam, but it definitely goes all the way back to Abraham and then through to Isaac and Jacob, and then it comes to Moses and it's talking about him leading the people through the wilderness and then the transgression of the golden calf. And because of that transgression, it says, like Jehovah says through Ezekiel, that he is going to add to the people a law that is not good, a law that is against them, a law that is contrary to them. And that is the sacrificial law. He had already given them the 10 Commandments. And that's the thing, like all you have to do is just read about what the Holy Covenant is, read the scriptures on the Holy Covenant, and there's nothing about the Holy Covenant that is a curse or a burden or against us. It's purely for us. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to keep the Holy Covenant because it's God's standard of righteousness. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, the Holy Covenant, and it's what makes his people his people. So if you're not keeping the covenant, you're just not his people. It's as simple as that. But yeah, Colossians 2, Ezekiel 20, Deuteronomy 31, read them all together. You're going to, you people need to understand this difference between the Holy Covenant and the sacrificial law. You will never understand the gospel if you don't. But that's just a quick message.